Uh, Thanks a lot. With permission of Bismi ma'am and other senior teachers who are present here, um, I would like to start my session. Before starting the session, I have a request. I request you to switch on your cameras, please. Bismi ma'am has switched on her camera, but others also, please switch on your cameras so that it doesn't feel like I'm talking to a laptop screen, right? If I can see your faces, it would be much better. Um, it's a great opportunity for me. So when one day morning when ma'am called me and asked me as to whether I'm willing to um, take a lecture on this particular subject, though I haven't had researched much on it till that point of time, without any further thought, I said yes to ma'am. And I have done some research on the topic. Here, I am planning to share certain questions with you. I'm not here to give you many answers because most of you here are much senior to me. So here, I would like to initiate certain exchange of ideas, exchange of thoughts, and I would like to receive questions from your end, and I also like to receive clarifications for my question. So if you can switch on your cameras, it would be of great help. Um, Without much further introduction, I will move into the subject, right, which is assigned to me, the topic that is assigned to me. It is with regard to, can anyone uh, name the topic for me? One of you, please. Do you have any idea about the topic that I'm going to present today? Yeah, it's there on the screen also, so you can look at it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
The topic is Environment and Sustainable Development with special reference to the Forest Conservation Amendment Act 2023.
yeah. So when ma'am asked me to present on Forest Conservation Amendment Act 2023, um, the title which I gave to ma'am was Forest Conservation Amendment Act Concerns and Challenges. I think that was the title which I gave to ma'am, and ma'am help me to modify this title as you see now. But this is a bigger challenge to me because there are a lot of terms here. So I would like to start today's class by explaining these terms to you. When I started to research on on this subject, I came to observe that this law was passed in a very swift manner by the government. In Lok Sabha, the discussion was about 15 minutes, if I'm not wrong. And in Rajya Sabha also, there was no much discussions. It was passed in a very swift manner. It was not sent to standing committee. It was just sent to a joint parliamentary committee. Then, even after receiving several concerns, comments, several worries, which was raised by various tribal communities, there was no change which was suggested to the act by the Joint Parliamentary Committee, and the act was passed as it is. So, before moving ahead with the subject, I would like to get a clarity on what Joint Parliamentary Committee is and what is a standing committee. Anyone who is having an idea about the same? Anyone?
Uh,
Yeah.
join join that join where both houses represent.
Okay. Okay. Is it like that, or then what is standing committee?
Standing committees for specific areas. there will be a chairman
Okay.
for that committee. It's
Okay.
one of the members of the parliament.
Okay. So we have something known as pre-legislative consultation policy. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. I also got to know more about this particular policy when I was researching on this particular topic. The name of the policy is pre-legislative consultation policy. Right. So according to this policy, it was observed that it is necessary to review the bills before it has been introduced in the parliament, so that various concerns with regard to the various bills which are presented in the parliament uh, can be addressed, and a more efficient bill can be brought for review before the parliament. Now, the pre-legislative consultation policy requires a law, a suggested law, to be sent to the standing committee for a review, and by considering their suggestions, the parliament can have further discussions on the bill and make the law more efficient. That is the idea. Now, do you know who is heading the standing committee with regard to our subject? And do you know the name of the standing committee with regard to environment? Anyone who is having an idea about the same? Anyone who is having an idea about the same? I want you people to speak. If you don't speak, it will be very difficult.
Yes, sir.
No, okay. It is Jairam Ramesh. Jairam Ramesh is the one who is heading the standing committee on matters with regard to environment. That standing committee is known as Standing Committee on Science, Technology, Environment, and Forest. It is chaired by Jairam Ramesh. Right. So standing committee is a body which has been established under definite subjects as decided by the parliament on to consider various bills which have been introduced by various ministries. While a joint parliamentary committee is a committee which has been constituted to consider a particular bill in a particular circumstance, right? So once they give comment on that particular bill which has been assigned to them, their purpose has been served, and that committee won't be relevant anymore, while a standing committee will continue to be there in existence for a definite period of time. That is the basic difference between a standing committee and a joint parliamentary committee. This bill was not sent to the standing committee. It was sent to a joint parliamentary committee. It was not sent to the standing committee on science, technology, environment, and forest. There starts the issues. Now, let me ask you the second question. What do you mean by carbon sink? SINK. Carbon sink. Do you have any idea about the same? There are 164 participants here. I heard.
Forest Act is a carbon sink. That is what is my limited understanding, sir.
Okay, Forest Act is the carbon sink. Okay. No, my question
Forest
is,
Act is a carbon sink.
my question is, what is carbon sink?
Anything that absorb the carbon.
Okay, anything that absorbs the carbon, carbon sink.
footprints,
Yeah.
decrease in carbon footprints.
Is carbon footprint and carbon sink the same?
I don't have any idea. I just guessed.
No issue, no issue. You need not have any idea, right? Understand that at this point of time, no one is an expert in anything, right? That is something which I realized after coming into this profession. Now, being in this profession, I am only bringing out certain facts to you, which is available to you in your fingertips. Even if you search in Google, you will get all these details. Since all of you are so honest, you are not searching in Google. That's why you're just admitting the fact that you don't have any idea about this, right? What I'm doing here is just bringing out certain facts to you so as to make this topic easier for you to understand, right? So I'm just a facilitator. Even I came to know about most of these terms after starting to research on this particular topic. I'm not an expert in this. So that is not an issue. You can share your views on it. Any other answer on carbon sink?
So to my understanding, as I interpret from the term carbon sink, if I could give an example, I think when we say there's a fossil burning, so it releases a lot of carbon to the atmosphere and it causes imbalance. So I
Mhm.
think the carbon sink leads to this imbalance in the environment, is what I think I would try to interpret.
Okay. Uh, okay. Any other answer? Okay. Now I have another question. We'll come to the answer for this question, but before that, I have another question. What is net zero emission? Net zero emission.
So that's a balance between a rate of absorption of carbon dioxide and the rate of emission of carbon. The balance,
Uh, yeah, you are not clear. Can you
the
repeat it?
balance,
Please don't change the slide. I'm still in the first slide, right?
rate
Whoever
of
is
balance,
operating the slide, please don't change the slide. I'm still in the first slide. Yeah. Simi, please. Yeah.
rate of absorption and rate of emission, and the balance
Rate
between
of
these two.
absorption and rate of emission. Yes. Okay. Any other answer? Any
We're
other answer?
trying to have as emissions as possible, as close to the to have zero emissions, but just trying to bring as close to zero emissions.
I was not able to hear you properly. I don't know whether it is a connection issue with me. I was not able to hear you properly, Vinadi. Anyone else? Yeah.
Net zero emission is just basically to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases. Is
Okay. Okay. So now you have given the answers. I'm just giving an authority to your answers because I have already researched on it. That is the only advantage that I'm having over you, right? Carbon sink. If you are looking into the term carbon sink refers to absorbing carbon from the atmosphere, right? Carbon sink is about absorbing carbon from the atmosphere. So by planting more trees, you will be able to achieve the object of carbon sink, right? It is one of the method. Now, net zero emission is the amount of greenhouse gas emitted versus amount of greenhouse gas that has been taken out from the atmosphere. So the balance that has been achieved. Once you achieve the balance, once if the value is zero, then it is net zero emission. Okay. Hope you got an idea about this. Now, I have another question. I'm here just to ask you questions so that you give answers and my work is more simple. Now, my next question is with regard to a particular case. Have you heard of Godavarman Tirumulpad case? Godavarman Tirumulpad versus Union of India.
Yes.
Yes. What is the speciality with regard to that particular case? It's a very landmark judgment. It is a very special case. What is the speciality with regard to that particular case? Any idea?
Guideline with regard to non-forest use forest land cannot be made use for non-forest purposes, and it is a continuing mandamus.
Okay, forest land cannot be used for non-forest purposes. It is a continuing. You said something.
Continuing mandamus.
Oh,
So
yeah,
there are many.
continuing mandamus. I don't know how many of you have heard about this. Sir might have already researched on it. Girish sir might have already researched on it. So he's having an idea about that particular case. So TN Godavarman Tirumulpad versus Union of India is a very landmark case wherein the person filed a case for cutting down trees in Nilgiri regions, which was once under the control of a particular king, particular dynasty, right? So he filed a case, and the Supreme Court considered it as an opportunity, and they developed a new jurisprudence of continuing mandamus, right? So in continuing mandamus, they are overseeing whether the orders which are being passed by the Supreme Court is being followed in a proper manner, and they are passing series of orders, series of judgments, series of orders in one single case. The case is still ongoing, right? It's one single case. The petitioner have already passed away, right? It's one single case wherein they developed a jurisprudence called continuing mandamus. Now, later after this case, it was adopted in several other cases. That's what I came to know. But this is one of the very landmark judgment wherein the court developed this particular jurisprudence. Hope this is clear. Hope you're clear with what is a pre-legislative consultation policy, what is carbon sink, what is net zero emission, what is TN Godavarman Tiruvulpad case is about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, to make it more clear, right, the importance of TN Godavarman Tiruvulpad case, understand that recently in the year 2023, this case was, if I'm not wrong, was filed in the year 1995, 1996. And in the year 2023, the court considered a contempt petition under the same case. The court considered a contempt petition under the same case. And in the contempt petition, the court asked a question. Do you know what the question is? Do you know why I am bringing in this particular contempt petition before you? This contempt petition is very important because it is dealing with one of the aspects of the current amendment which has been brought in with regard to forest conservation. In the contempt petition, there was an issue wherein the national, what is the full form of NTCA? Anyone is having an idea? NTCA.
National Tiger Conservation Authority.
Yes, there is an authority called National Tiger Conservation Authority. We have various national parks. We have various tiger reserves. All of you might be aware of the same. Now, the National Tiger Conservation Authority, they granted permission for tiger safaris within tiger reserves and national parks. And they also, there was a question whether you can start a zoo within a national park. So there was a question that whether you can start a zoo within a national park. So the court said that the court cannot appreciate the logic of starting a zoo within national park, because the entire idea of establishing a national park or tiger reserve is to ensure that the animals in that particular land is living in a natural habitat and not in an artificial environment. So once you're planning to start a zoo within a national park, then what would be the effect? The effect would be that environment would be manipulated in such a manner as to make it comfortable for the people, right? So that they can see the animals, they can explore that particular national park. So the importance will be for the people and not for the animals. So this is a very simple logic, right? It's a very simple logic, right? You are not supposed to start a zoo within a national park. It's a very simple logic, right? But it came before the court, and court gave this opinion. And this opinion was given on February 8th, 2023. February 8th, 2023. What is that comment that I'm receiving? It was formed in 2005. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. National Tiger Conservation. Okay. That's fine. Hope you're clear with this. So there was an observation from the court in the year 2023, in the month of February, wherein the court observed that they cannot understand the logic of starting a zoo within a national park. Hope it's clear. Yeah. Many of you have raised your hands. Do you have any doubt? Since I'm from Christ, I always take in notice of this. So if you have any doubt, you can clear the doubt. Otherwise, please remove that particular symbol of raising your hand, so that whenever someone is having a genuine doubt, I can understand the same. Right? Okay. So where did we stop? We looked into what a pre-legislative consultation policy is. We looked into what carbon sink is, what net zero emission is. We looked into the case of Godavarman Tirumulpad. We looked into a contempt petition on which the court gave an observation in the year 2023 in the month of February. Okay. Now, do you know what I'm going to speak about? One more time. Can you name the legislation?
Forest Conservation Amendment Act.
No, I'm going to talk about Van Samrakshan Evam Samvardhan Adhiniyam. Right. So that is the actual name, that is the short title of the act, which has been given according to the amendment. Okay. So let's start with the first issue with this act. When they titled the act like this, there was a proposal even from the Joint Parliamentary Committee to make it more acceptable, right? This pattern of naming the legislations in Hindi, you can observe nowadays it is a continuous thing which is happening. So this is something which I wanted to bring to your notice, that when they brought in this bill, the short title of the bill was Van Samrakshan Evam Samvardhan Adhiniyam. Do you know the English translation of this? How many of you know? Van Samrakshan is forest conservation. Evam Samvardhan.
Promotion.
Promotion, yeah. Yeah, you're close. But that's not the actual word in English. It is augmentation. It is augmentation. Forest Conservation and Augmentation Act. So basically, you are supposed to expand the forest area, right? According to this act, the basic object of this act is also to expand the forest area, not just to conserve the forest area, but also to expand the forest area. Okay, clear? Any doubt with regard to this? Any doubt? All of you are clear with regard to this, right? Yeah. Now, let's move on to another fact. Do you know when was this introduced in the parliament? Do you know when was this act introduced in the parliament? Any idea? Anyone? At least tell that it was introduced in the year 2023. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you
sir.
hear my question? Yeah. When was it passed?
2023, sir.
Yeah, 2023. Okay. Which month? July. Yeah. Okay. So during this particular time, July, August, that particular period, there was one major issue which was happening in India. What was it? Can you name the issue? Have you heard about Manipur violence?
Yes.
Yes. So it was during that particular period this bill was introduced in the parliament. So the opposition, they walked out for demanding discussions on Manipur violence, and the Rajya Sabha passed this bill. Now that is another major fact that you have to take notice of. Okay? Is it clear?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Any doubt with regard to this? Now, what is sustainable development?
Development which focus also the future generation.
Okay. So the quote, I was trying to get a definition for the term sustainable development from a judgment of the court. And the Supreme Court of India, they have defined sustainable development in such a manner wherein they have said that sustainable development is development which meet the need of the present without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. So sustainable development, it is about development which meet the need of the present without compromising on the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. Okay? Is it clear? That is what sustainable development means. Sustainable development takes care of the developmental needs of the present generation without compromising on the needs of the future generation. Okay? Is it clear? Any doubt with regard to this? Any doubt with regard to this? No, right? Yeah. So in the case of T.N. Godavarman Tirumulpad versus Union of India, they said that all the forest land needs to be protected. No cutting of trees shall be allowed in environmentally sensitive areas, environmentally sensitive zones. No cutting of trees shall be allowed. There shall be strict laws to ensure that no tree is being cut without the permission of the government, without the knowledge of the government. No tree shall be cut, and in usual circumstances the government shall not allow the same. And in that particular case, there were special references which were made to Jammu and Kashmir, northeastern states, the importance of protecting these regions, the importance of protecting environmentally sensitive areas were stressed upon by the court in this particular case. Right? However, there was an issue. In the judgment, they said that the Forest Conservation Act of 1980 is applicable to all areas which are recorded as forest according to the government records. Now, secondly, all areas which would conform with the dictionary meaning of the term forest, and all areas which is identified as forest by an expert committee in pursuance of 1996 Supreme Court order and the affidavit which was filed before the Supreme Court by that expert committee. So there was a doubt as to in which cases which land can be considered as forest and which land cannot be considered as forest. According to this judgment, they gave a very broad definition to forest, and almost all kinds of land could be considered as forest. So the government, while introducing this particular bill before the parliament, they said that we want to bring a clarity to the judgment of T.N. Godavarman Tirumulpad and make it clear as to which land can be covered within the definition of forest and which land cannot be covered, so that it will not be against the interest of the people, so that you can avoid a conflict of human-animal conflict. Now, where does this term human and animal conflict emerge from? If the court say that no construction activities can be carried out in a particular area which is being located near a forest, then Is it right? Is it right for the court to take such a decision? The court in this case, TN Godavarman Tirumulpad, they observed that they asked to protect all the area within 1 kilometer radius of a forest, right? They passed a judgment with regard to that. But later, they understood the fact that there are large number of people who are living near forest for a long period of time. There is lack of availability of land that is good enough for people to live in. So we cannot make a strict law saying that people should not be carrying out any activities in that particular land. So the court modified the order in such a way that you can construct permanent structures in that particular land. However, no commercial activities like mining, quarry, right? Such operation shall not be permitted within that particular area, ecologically sensitive zone. Okay, is that clear? So to bring in more clarity to all these issues, as a government, it is the responsibility of the government to consider the needs of the people, the needs of all the sections of the society, and ensure that all their needs are being met. Sustainable development is about meeting the needs of the present, right, without compromising on the needs of the future. So the government said that we are bringing more clarity to this particular judgment. Now let's see how they are bringing clarity to the judgment. Can you move on to the second slide, please? Please. Yeah. Now, when you look into the particular act, the Amendment Act was passed, right? The bill was passed by considering ecological, strategic, and economic aspirations of the country. Ecological, strategic, and economic aspirations of the country. By considering all this, this act was passed. It's a good thing, right? Next slide, please. Please, yeah. Now, their aim, the objects of the act, national target of net zero emission has to be achieved by the year 2070. Create additional carbon sink by the year 2030. Increase forest and tree cover to 1/3 of India's total land area. Enhance forest-based economic, social, and environmental benefits. Conservation, management, and restoration of forest. Maintain ecological security. Sustaining cultural and traditional values of forest and facilitating economic needs. And ensuring carbon neutrality. Is there anything to oppose in this? There is nothing to oppose in this. Everything is very good. Everything is in line with the term, the short title of the act, that is Forest Conservation Act. Right? There is nothing wrong in that. Can you move on to the next slide? Now, when you look into the economic and social impact of this particular legislation, they were exempting certain land from the definition of forest, which was earlier proposed under, which was earlier proposed under which which case? TN Godavarman Tirumulpad, right? It asks to conserve all forest land, right? And do you remember that 3 classifications of forest land, which was required to be conserved according to the judgment of TN Godavarman Tirumulpad? Do you remember the case? Do you remember those points which I dictated a few minutes before? Yes, no, maybe. Yes, no, maybe. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So in TN Godavarman Tirumilpad, what was the judgment of the court? The court defined type of forest land, and wherein they said that all areas which are recorded as forest according to the government record, all areas other than those which was covered, those which are covered according to the dictionary meaning of the forest, all areas which are identified as forest by the expert committee. Right. This was the judgment of the court. However, certain exceptions were drawn out by the government in this particular legislation to bring in clarity to the term forest, to ensure that to improve the understanding that what will constitute forest and what will not constitute forest, so that economic activity is also permissible to a great extent. At the same time, people are able to live. The strategic needs of the country is also being taken care of, right? So the land which was recorded as forest before 1980 but not notified as forest, and land which changed from forest use to non-forest use before 1996 is exempted from the definition of forest. The first thing. Secondly, land near border areas for national security purposes, for national security projects, it is exempted from the definition of forest. And blanket exemption was provided to projects like zoos, ecotourism, and surveys. Right? Now, what is the issue with regard to the last point? What is the issue with regard to the last point? We already have a judgment in the year 2023, in the month of February, wherein the Supreme Court have observed that whether starting a zoo within a tiger reserve is logical, whether starting a zoo within a sanctuary is logical. We already have such a observation from the court, and without considering that particular observation, a blanket exemption for all zoo projects, ecotourism facilities. And what is the last term? None of you asked me. Is this the vibrant audience that ma'am was talking about? You're not asking me any question. What is the last word in the last point?
Reconnaissance surveys.
What is it?
I don't know, sir.
Any idea? Anyone is having any idea? So if you don't know, you should ask, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what is the meaning of that particular term? It means that for military observation of a region, right? Consider that Jammu and Kashmir, consider northeastern states which are sharing borders, right? So for military observation purposes, for military surveys, right, it is exempted, right? The definition of forest, that area cannot, need not be considered as forest, and they can carry out the activities. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, sir. One of the member have posted it in the group. Now, biodiversity preservation. No. Move on to the earlier slide. Sorry. I didn't complete the earlier slide. Yeah. Now, let's move back to the first 2 points. We have already, I hope all of you understood as to what is the problem with the third point. Did all of you understand the problem with the third point? Yeah, let's move to the first 2 points. What is the problem? Land recorded as forest before October 25, 1980, but not notified as forest, and land which changed from forest use to non-forest use before December 12, 1996. What is the problem? Or exempting land near border areas for national security projects. What is the problem? What is the problem? Can you identify any problem?
Not identified as a forest.
Yeah, so you are not identifying it as a forest, because of which? Because of which? What will happen? There can be construction activities which can be carried out in the particular area, right? In the name of national security, even private parties might exploit that particular area. It might affect the right of indigenous communities in that particular area. So what about legislations that we have made for protecting the rights of indigenous communities? What about the biodiversity hotspots? If my understanding is correct, northeastern states have biodiversity hotspots. Very, very important areas which require utmost protection. So in that area, if you are constructing towers, constructing roads, by cutting down trees, by destroying forest in the name of national security, is it right to do so? According to the note which I have made, 4 out of 34 biodiversity hotspot is in India, right? Which make the forest of that particular area more important. So when you're making such a law, it can affect northeastern states, it can affect Jammu and Kashmir, which are very ecologically sensitive areas, which have which are biodiversity hotspots. It can severely affect those areas, and it can compromise on the resource that we are having. It can affect the environment of our country, the forest area of our country. Right? Did you understand the issue now? Do you understand? Yes. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I have mentioned here that northeastern states are biodiversity hotspots. Over the year, the forest cover in the northeastern states have been declining due to shifting cultivation, felling of trees, natural calamities, and the pressure from various developmental activities. Can you move on to the next slide? Now, have you heard of Copenhagen Summit? Was there such a summit? There are
Yes,
various
sir.
international conventions, right?
Yes, sir.
What is that summit about?
Landfill or something. I don't.
Any of you?
Climate change.
Yeah, it was with regard to climate change, yes. But what is the significance of Copenhagen Summit?
Protect the ozone layer and related issues.
They discuss various issues, right? Copenhagen Climate Change Summit was one of the landmark international development which have happened with regard to various climate issues which are happening around the world. And in that particular summit, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they made a statement that Earth is flirting with danger. The alarm flag has already been hoisted, right? Wherein they took note of the fact that the sea level is rising. There are various issues happening because of climate change. So we are enjoying various developmental benefits that are happening around us, but at the same time, we are playing with danger, and an alarm flag has already been hoisted. And it was in this circumstance, the government swiftly, very easily, right, in a very speedy manner, passed this particular legislation, which had lot of issues, of which I have mentioned few till this point of time. Can you move on to the next slide? Now, there is a question. They have exempted certain areas from the definition of forest, right? They have exempted certain areas from the definition of forest. The intention of the government is to make it easier to carry out the activities which are of military importance in the requirement of defense of the country. The activities shall be able to be carried out in a very easy manner, right? So there is a question, will exemption actually reduce the delay? What do you think? Will exempting certain land from the definition of forest will actually reduce the delay? What do you think? Please answer the question.
No, it will not reduce the delay.
Why?
Rather, it may allow more activities to be conducted in forest.
Thank you, sir, for your answer, but why? Can you answer that question?
Exemption data.
What? Sir have given the right observation. That was the answer which I was looking for. Providing exemption to certain land from the definition of forest might not make the fulfillment or the clearance of security projects easier, or it might not address the overall delay in security project. The main reason for the same is that the significant proportion of delay with regard to forest clearances usually take place at the state level, and it does not take place at the central level, right? So when you search in the internet, you might see that there are a lot of applications which are pending for forest clearances from state government authorities, right? So this is a central legislation, and the major delay is being caused at the state governmental level. So will an amendment in the central government legislation address that particular issue? The answer to the question is no, and the delay or the overall delay in such project might continue, right? Especially security projects in border areas. Understand that if it is near a wildlife sanctuary, if it is near a biodiversity hotspot, there are serious concerns with regard to the same, right? There are certain conditions which are mentioned in the act to ensure that the land is not being exploited in an easy manner. They say that we have put in certain conditions to ensure that the land is not being used for non-forest purpose in an easy manner. One of the first criteria which they have brought in is that forest area involved must not be within a national park or wildlife sanctuary. They have mentioned that. The second exemption is that the user agency or the agency which is proposed to implement that particular project might have to explore all feasible alternatives, right? And the land which is diverted for some use, including the border security, will deem to be continuing to be recognized as forest land. This was an already provided mechanism to use the border areas for non-forest purposes. Now, this limitations is also being overthrown through the recent amendment which was introduced by the Parliament, right? Which was brought in by the Parliament. Now, when you are using the forest for generating economic benefit out from it by establishing zoos, by establishing programs, right, in relation to the environment, like that of a hiking or a camp, which you can conduct within the forest. The purpose of establishing such a sanctuary will be compromised, and it will actually harm the people who are living nearby, because it will compromise the quality of that particular land. That is the first thing that you have to observe. It will compromise the quality of the land, and the economic benefit that they are gaining might not be able to ensure conservation of that particular area, which should be given primacy. Right? So this is another major issue. The purpose of zoo inside forest, I have already answered that particular question through the observation which was passed by the Supreme Court in the recent contempt petition on T.N. Godavarman versus Union of India, wherein the court observed that what is the logic of establishing a zoo within a wildlife sanctuary? If you are establishing a zoo within the wildlife sanctuary, then you are acting against the purpose of wildlife sanctuary, wherein the animals have to be left free. They should be able to enjoy the natural environment, the natural habitat, which will be largely compensated. Also, the forest land which are situated alongside a rail line, public road, which is maintained by the government, that provide access to habitation, all these lands are also exempted from the definition of forest. I have not mentioned it in the slide. The forest land within the border area, within the kilometer of, they have mentioned 100 kilometers, within the range of 100 kilometers, or within 100 kilometers from the line of control, can be used for strategic linear projects. What do you mean by strategic linear projects? Any idea? What is strategic linear project? Any idea? There are many of you who have raised your hands. Do you have any answers for this question? What do you mean by strategic linear area?
Don't know, sir.
Anyone else? I think Grisa is one person who is having a great knowledge over this subject, because he is able to answer a lot of questions. Right? So not knowing this particular answer doesn't matter. But anyone else who want to try?
Construction of maybe railways or sidewalks or anything that goes
Linear
just straight.
projects include which is starting at a particular area, but which is continuing to other areas. Example can be pipelines, laying of pipelines, construction of highways, right? Construction of airport runways, right? All these are examples for the same. Okay. Now, what is, yes, you're right. You're right. Now, who determines whether this is relevant with regard to security? whether it is relevant with regard to defense. Do you know another interesting thing which they have made in this particular legislation is exempting certain lands to the extent of 5 hectares in central government notified left-wing extremism affected areas. What do you mean by left-wing extremism? Any idea?
Maybe the threat from Naxalite groups.
Yeah, Naxalite, Maoists. Are they terrorists?
Rebels within the
Not,
country.
could not be categorized into terrorists
Then
because
They are
who
they
rebels
can they be
within the country.
identified as?
then they may be fighting for the rights for their own land, even though they
Understand
may
that?
be
Yes,
from armed groups may get into place, but and could not be justified. But from their perspective, there can be reasons for them because
yes,
their traditional land rights are curtailed. So
yes. So understand that. However, according to my understanding, CPI, Maoist, and similar organizations are banned terrorist organizations under UAPA. They were banned, right? In the early years itself, they were banned. But the issue with regard to these organizations is that the way the government handled this organization is little different from they handle other terrorist organizations. So making in such a provision wherein they are saying that um, if the extent of the project exceeds 5 hectares in central government notified left-wing extremist areas, they can exempt that particular land from the definition of forest. Is it throws very important question with regard to uh, how the objective of the act in itself is being compromised. Now, tree plantations are also being exempted from the definition of the act. Now, earlier, the requirement was that in order to carry out any construction or any commercial activity in these areas, it required prior mandatory approval of the central government. Now, the amendment has completely removed this and it has left it to the discretion of the state government and union territory administration. So earlier, understand that there was a requirement wherein it was required to get the permission of the central government in order to make any diversion in the forest area and to use it for non-forest purposes. It required permission of the central government. But now the central government has completely removed that particular requirement. Now the obligation is on the state government and the union territories. Do you know why was the 1980 Forest Conservation Act was introduced? Do you know? To understand the reason for creating the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, you should you can just read the Joint Parliamentary Committee report on this particular bill which was proposed, right? Which was proposed during that time when they were giving the comment. They have explained the purpose of enacting an act called Forest Conservation Act, wherein they have clearly mentioned that during the period of 1951 to 1975, during the period of 1951 to the period of 1975, 4.135 million hectares of forest land was diverted for for making it used for non-forest purposes without any regard for the environment. Can you repeat what I said?
Yeah. The forest shall not be made use for non-forest purposes.
No, no.
And
So what I said was during the period of 1951 to 1975, the forest was used for non-forest purposes.
yeah, so many million hectares of land was made use of for non-forest purposes.
Non-forest purposes. Right. And it was then, earlier, forest was a what subject?
State list. It was in state list.
It was in the state list. It was because of this particular reason that it was made into
Concurrent list.
concurrent list. The amendment is 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976, wherein the government during that time, they felt that it is necessary to put a check on the uncontrolled and unregulated use of forest land for non-forestry uses. And they felt the need to ensure that there is a regulatory mechanism in place. And for ensuring a regulatory mechanism and to ensure that the non-forest use of forest land is being regulated, the Forest Conservation Act of 1980 was passed. Now you tell me, by the central government, by completely excluding themselves from the responsibility of the mandatory approval which they were supposed to give, have they compromised the object of the act? The object of the act was based on the understanding that when the state governments were managing the forest land, it was not managed properly. There was many instances. There was a lot of area of forest land which was used for non-forest purposes. There was abuse of process. Hence, it is required to ensure regulation, for which they changed a subject from state list to concurrent list. Then they passed a legislation. Now, the same legislation has been amended, wherein it has been said that now the central government is having no power. And it is left to the discretion of the state government and to the union territories. Understand that even for establishment of zoos in forest land, now there is no need for prior approval. How will this impact forest? How will it impact the biodiversity? It will impact the forest and biodiversity in a very, very, very bad manner. Right? Considering the system that is prevailing in our country, it will affect the forest and biodiversity of our country in a very bad manner. Understand that the joint committee report which I was talking about, it was a 31-member joint parliamentary committee. And if a student of law like me, who is speaking before you in this platform, in this day, is able to understand the issues with regard to this particular amendment, if I am able to see that how it is violating the landmark judgments of and observations of the Honorable Supreme Court of our country, weren't they capable enough of seeing these flaws? Understand that there was no single change which was proposed. It was accepted as it is. While 6 MPs who were part of that committee, they were opposition MPs, they noted down the dissent. They noted down their dissent in approving that particular bill. What is the guarantee that the government can give that by exempting these land from the definition of forest, wouldn't the private developers cut down forest without getting consent of the forest dwellers by stating that it is for ecotourism purposes? Wouldn't they get easy permissions from the government? We have a very landmark judgment, the judgment of MC Mehta versus. Can you name the second part wherein the concept of public trust doctrine was evolved?
Kamal Nath.
MC Mehta versus Kamal Nath. Right. Consider that particular judgment. Now, wherein it was clearly held that it is a public owned resource, which even the government is having no right to control. Right. They are just ensuring that it is not exploited. They cannot sell it. The court made it very clear. Then comes the question. Now the question comes: can they use it for military purposes? And if the answer is yes, wouldn't it compromise this basic ideas, right, which the court tried to introduce, the basic jurisprudence which the court tried to introduce in order to protect our forest land and our biodiversity? And how will we ensure this exploited resources are made available to our future generation? How will the sustainable development goal will be achieved if we are doing this? Interestingly, one of the aim of the government by passing this particular land is to bring 1/3 of the country under forest land. 1/3 of the country. Wherein earlier there were even confusions with regard to establishing a permanent structure near a forest land, not in a forest land, near a forest land, wherein the court have clearly said that in a mandatory radius of 1 kilometer radius, they are eco-sensitive zones and no commercial activity can be carried out, no permanent structures can be made, which they later modified, understanding the fact that there is population explosion, there is requirement of compromising on certain strict rules. They compromised it by saying that you cannot carry out mining activities, you can establish structures for you to stay over there, under the understanding that if a person was staying there for a long period of time, what if he want to renovate his house and live there? That was the perception. That was the perception of the court. And how is it being interpreted now? It has been made open in such a manner that the forest and the biodiversity can be exploited to the maximum extent. The discussions, what was the length of discussions which happened in Parliament?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. And did you know in the Rajya Sabha when it was introduced, the minister said that it is important, hear this, it is important to construct highways, railway lines, and public roads in these areas. Right? This is just for you to think right from the starting. Think about things which I have introduced to you. It was in violation of pre-legislative consultation policy. It is a policy. There is no binding effect. I am accepting that fact. It was not sent to the standing committee for their suggestions on that particular report. It was during the Manipur issue Do you know how many bills were passed in that particular session? Back to back, 5. Back to back, 5 legislations were passed without much discussions. Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Amendment Bill 2023, Jan Vishwas Amendment of Provisions Bill, Multi-State Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill, Biological Diversity Amendment Bill, Forest Conservation. I'm not here to make any political statements, but understand that law at certain points of time will appear to be political. When I'm stressing on the pre-legislative consultation policy, you might be asking this question that it is not mandatory for the government to send it to standing committee, then why are you stressing on it? It's a convention which has been practiced. And it was clearly mentioned in the pre-legislative consultation policy to ensure the efficiency of these legislations. It is necessary to send these reports for the suggestions of the standing committee. I think I have introduced the issues. I have posed some questions to you with regard to the topic which was assigned to me. I hope concepts involved in the same has been made clear to you. I'm stopping here. You have 15 minutes for asking questions. You can move to the next slide, please.
Sir, shall I take the point, sir?
Yeah, for sure.
Sir, as you rightly pointed out, keeping apart the politics, they have introduced the amendments to the Biological Diversity Act of India also.
Yes.
So, Forest Conservation Act we have now. Earlier we have the Forest Rights Act of 2006 and the related forest amendment rules also.
Yes.
That recognizes rights of indigenous peoples and other forest dwelling communities. That
Yes.
uphold the privileges of the both civil and as well as human rights. So, by the Biological Diversity Amendment Bill, they have taken away the concept of this prior informed consent for the access to resources and other sorts of qualified traditional knowledge, and many such amendments have been brought in. So we have a handful of amendments or a handful of laws for a single area. So whether it is enough time to club all these together and to have if the actual aim is for the sustainable use and conservation of these resources as well as the area, then whether it is enough time or it is already we are so late in clubbing together all these. Clubbing together all these laws for the conservation of this, as you rightly pointed out, the resources as well as the forest areas and the upholding the rights of these forest dwelling communities. What's your take on this?
According to my understanding, right, since I was taught by professors like Bismi Man's student is my professor. So Dr. Girish Kumar sir, Dr. K.C. Sarni sir, they were my teachers. So according to the understanding which I have obtained from them, understand that all laws, when it has been passed, there is a politics behind. There is a politics behind it. The politics is not the agenda of BJP, Congress, or the Communist Party. The politics behind that particular law is that of market. Right. When you're talking about sustainable development, it is about market. We are talking about economic development. We are talking about the need. What is the need? It is the requirement of the market. It is not the need of the people. It is the requirement of the market. It is not what is best for the people. And I feel that when a government which is very open, which is very open with regard to a free market, wherein the regulation of the government is considered to be least, these issues will emerge. So the government should be making policies in such a manner that they should not restrict each and every right of individual. That is not what is being expected, but they should be there as a regulator. when the government withdraw themselves from the role of regulator, there starts the issue. With regard to all these laws, what we can see is that the government is trying to pull itself out from the role of regulator, and they are opening up the market in the name of development, in the name of conservation. They are opening up the market, and there lies the issue. Right, that is my stand. I don't have a clear-cut answer to your question. My answer is this. I hope you have got what you expected from me.
Yes, sir. The same when you go through all these acts or anything, we have the same feeling. Even though conventional biological diversity says about sustainable use and conservation of resources, when it comes to application level, it is just the facilitation of access to resources or maximum facilitation, maximizing the access to resources. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other question? Can you move on to the next slide, please? None of the ideas which was presented by me is my idea. It is from these sources. You can refer to these sources and can develop a better understanding about this than what I have already presented before you. You can refer to these sources. I have mentioned it in the references. The sites which I have referred to is PRS India. They have given a beautiful commentary on this particular bill. Live Law, Hindu, and Indian Express. Hindu, Indian Express, and Live Law. If you want to read these articles, you should have subscription. PRS India is an open website. Can you move on to the next slide? This is my mail ID. You can contact me in this mail ID. Right, I'm there in LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. You can connect with me through those platforms too. Right. If you have any more questions, I'm happy to entertain the questions. I stopped 15 minutes before to entertain the questions. I heard that. I heard from ma'am that all of you are very keen at asking questions. Right. Any more questions? Shaji Vishwambaran, you have raised your hand. So if you have any questions, you can raise it.